divine lotus feet of Bhagavan on this very important day for all such Sai devotees. Swami's Aradhana on 2011 April 24th, Swami has chosen to leave his physical body and be available to us in his infinite cosmic form. I was thinking that in a span of 85 years, starting from 23rd November 1926, the things that Swami has done in that 8.5 decades is, if somebody were to really take an account of that, it's phenomenal. Of course, any Sai devotee would say, what is so special about it? He's God, right? So he can do anything he wants. But that is the case. Swami has, while as God, of course, he has come in response to prayers of countless number of his devotees, and has in fact responded to millions of his devotees in his own way, individually. At a societal level, the kind of things that he has done is also phenomenal. And if you think about it, except for the first 13.5 years of his life, where he has not formally declared himself to be having a mission that he would like to accomplish in his life, he spent as an ordinary child primarily living in that vicinity of Puttaparthi and Uravakonda, nearby town in Anantapur district, and Kamalapuram for some time in Kadapa district. But except for those 13.5 years of time, when he has chosen to limit his powers to just being an ordinary child, from then onwards, 1940, October 20th, I was thinking about it, each decade that he spent. 1940 is when he declared himself to be not an ordinary child, and that he has a mission, that he has come for a purpose, and his devotees are waiting, all of that. And then from 1940 to 1950, I was thinking in terms of these decades, right? 1940 to 1950, for 10 years, while being in that surroundings, he somehow was able to connect with, and I say somehow, but then he has his own inimitable ways of doing it. And devotees from Chennai, devotees from Bangalore, devotees from Mysore, and these are all places in South India where, nearby so-called metro cities today, but in those days probably not as much. But devotees used to come to him, and he would visit the devotees' houses, which is very common in those days. Swami would go to Chennai, live there in some devotee's house for 2 weeks or maybe longer. And in the process, of course, connect with several other devotees that were in the vicinity. He used to go to Venkatagiri Samsthan. In those days, those were the kingdoms, small kingdoms. And then this Venkatagiri is one such kingdom in Andhra Pradesh, and Swami used to go spend a lot of time with them. And he didn't obviously go on his own. The first step was, of course, that he drew them to him, and then he visited those places. Similarly, Mysore Maharaja Palace. Swami used to live in Mysore Maharaja Palace for a few days at the request of the Mysore Maharaja. And so he would travel to all these nearby places, connecting, spreading his love and message to these devotees, transforming primarily these devotees' lives, and coming in connection with, probably declaring his presence to many other devotees in that region, 1940 to 1950. 1950 is when Swami inaugurated the Prashanti Nilayam as it used to be in the old form. And that's when a formal official residence for Bhagavan was, bigger mandir was constructed, though it was not called a mandir in those days. It used to be called simply Prashanti Nilayam. That's Swami's abode. And then, of course, in those 50 to 60, he traveled a little more extensively and more people came to him. 1960s is the decade in which Swami made long distance travel. He went to North India for the first time with his entourage to Badrinath, and then Gujarat, and he had a lot of devotees from Gujarat in those days, in the 60s, and he would visit remote corners of North India when he was traveling to Badrinath. So his stretch to North Indian part of the devotees physically, and I'm talking all of this in a physical sense. So 60s to 70s is when he did that stretch. During that time is also the first time Swami actually left India and went to East Africa on a first time overseas visit. And so that's when his mission started spreading even beyond. 1968 also, I think, the Satya Sai First World Conference was held in Bombay, and so slowly the spread of Swami's mission, so our awareness about Swami, who he is, what he is, etc., started spreading across India in the 60s to 70s. That's also the time when Swami has started his monthly magazine called Sanatana Saradi, which used to be printed near Bangalore and mailed out to devotees. So he's not only physically reaching out to all devotees, but his message started spreading to far off regions. So 70s, close to 70s is when Swami started his first formal educational institutions for Satya Sai College for Women in Anantapur. So that was his first educational venture in that sense. And then 70s to 80s is when he started his college in Whitefield. 1979 is when he started his college in Prashanthi. And then on the focus was primarily on educational institutions, spreading the education, Swami's values and an education in value-based sense. So value-based education. Swami conducted annual summer courses during those 70s in Ooty, in Whitefield, and in various places each year, selecting young children, young adults from across India for exposure to these spiritual topics. So in the 70s, he established these colleges, spread this education movement, Satya Sai Education, Satya Sai Bal Vihars. All of these started in the 70s. This is not to say this is all he did in those. Of course, parallelly, he was reaching out to devotees across the world. There were devotees from various other countries, including the United States of America, that people were reaching out and coming, and they were being drawn to him. And so while his mission was being spread, physically he was doing this, a lot of emphasis on educational institutions. And then from the 80s, that's in the 80s, the 90s to 2000, is when Swami inaugurated the Satya Sai Super Specialty Hospital in Prashanthi. And then on, it's the medical, free medical facilities and things like that in that decade. Of course, Swami continued to travel across India. So it's not like he moved on from one thing to the other while maintaining the previous things that he started. He started new initiatives. That's also the time when Swami focused on what he called as Grama Seva, the service in the villages, where he exhorted all of his devotees, his students included in those days when I was there in Prashanthi Nilayam. He said he used to send us to nearby remote villages in Anantapur district for doing service activities. So while service was always a part and parcel of Satya Sai organization and mission, Swami gave a lot of emphasis at that time, saying that service to God is service to man is service to God, right? So he would push for these kind of things and emphasize while maintaining all the other things. So the 90s was when there was a huge push on the service activities across the world, across wherever the Sai organization. The organization itself grew phenomenally during those 2-3 decades, 70s, 80s, 90s, and beyond. So during the 2000 and so on, 2000 to 2010, that's when he pretty much probably didn't travel as much. Little bit he did, but not as much as he did in the 80s and the 90s, 60s, 70s, 80s and the 90s. In those 10 years is when the huge influx of devotees from across the world, from almost all the countries in the world, people flocked to him in Prashantini. All the countries in the world, people flocked to him in Prashantini. You will recall, some of us will recall, that during that time there were a lot of pilgrimages that were conducted almost on a yearly basis. People used to go in batches to Prashantinilayam, and so that happened. And it's like Swami prepared all of this and then slowed down on his physical movements beyond Prashantinilayam, as if preparing us all for us to get used to praying to Swami while he is not physically in front of us. So 2010 and then 2011 April is when he chose to leave his body. And then it's nothing stopped really, except that Swami is physically coming out of Prashantinilayam, Prashanti Mandir and giving darshan, except that every other activity of Satyasai organization continues to in the same spirit, and if, in fact even in a stronger spirit till date. So I was sitting and thinking that, when you think about what Swami did, there are several ways one can look at it. And what I presented to you now in terms of decades is just one way to look at it. 10 years is a small time frame when you look at it from one perspective, but it's also a long time. And in all of these 8.5 decades, he touched millions and millions of devotees, transformed their lives, came to their rescue, inspired them to do things that they never thought that they are capable of doing, right? So these are the things that he did and he continues to do in current day. Now, I was also thinking, you said 5 minutes. I was also thinking, when these avataric occurrences happen on earth, it's not as if it's limited to their physical existence on earth at all. Think about it from a bigger perspective. Lord Rama, for example. Lord Rama, when was Lord Rama's physical occurrence on this earth? We don't even know the exact count. But does it matter? Today we have thousands of temples dedicated to Lord Rama, and there are numerous devotees who had worshipped Lord Rama, chanted his name, sang his kirtanams, sanctified their lives, had visions of Lord Rama, and continue to have until today. You talk to devotees of Lord Rama, there are countless situations when Lord Rama actually appeared. Bhadrachal Ramadas being one such person, where he appeared to pay the debt that Ramadas had. Saint Tyagaraja is an example. When was that? 17th century, 15th century. When was Lord Rama? So, not being physically present on earth did not limit any of these avataric occurrences in the past. Nearest, prior to Swami, our nearest avatar, only 5,000 some small years ago. But then Lord Krishna continues to be worshipped. Lord Krishna's devotees have experienced his visions. Saint Meera, for example, right? And so it continues, it goes on, Surdas, and the list is endless. So it will be with any other avataric occurrence, including, of course, Bhagavan, right? So there is something called a physical occurrence, and the way they will conduct the things that they do while they are on this earth is one aspect of it. That after that, it's an entirely different thing, and the Sanskrit word for this is Upasya Murti. So an entity that needs to be worshipped, meditated upon, and efforts to be made so that you realize that divine presence within oneself. So that is called Upasya Murti. Like for example, Lord Rama, Taraka Mantra is supposed to be Lord Rama's mantra, right? There are many devotees who will do that mantra japa, they write Likhita japam, they take Sri Ram, Sri Ram, Sri Ram, Sri Ram, and they will do Tyagaraja, for example, this is supposed to have done 1 crore of that. So when somebody, that is upasana, that is worship, right? You make this phenomenon, this name and this particular form, an entity that is very intimate and that is very close to you, and you take that name and form as a support for your own spiritual evolution. That's the goal, right? And so in doing so, the physical avataric mission now moves on to a upasya type of devotion, that where you worship it not just as an individual who walked the earth and did certain things, but as an all-permeating cosmic divine presence in a form and a name that is dear to our heart. And so that's where currently Bhagavan's presence is, right? And I hope and pray, and when we do these, celebrate or recognize these days as special days, these give us an opportunity to contemplate, reflect, and then take inspiration and internalize these divine principles that Swami has asked us to imbibe and try to practice to the extent that we are able to. So on this day, I am thankful for asking me to share a few thoughts. And I pray to Bhagavan that he bless us all to really make progress on our spiritual paths. When probably he was physically there, we would ask Swami, do this for me, Swami, I want this, Swami, I want that. But now, we all accept that everything that happens around us in our lives, in others' lives, is obviously the divine will. And all we can ask is that to keep us on a path that would make us fitting devotees of Bhagavan. So with that prayer, I offer my humble salutations at Bhagavan's lotus feet. Jai Sai.